my boy Ghazi. We
See
just good to see you too, man. It's always good to see you. We just finished doing some pad work, doing some sparring. What makes you think that religion gives you a better mindset when combating like the degeneracy that we see like today?
Okay.
When you're like making the decisions day to day, also like for your life, you know, when you think about the bigger picture of things, and when you have that strong religion, like one thing that I constantly think about is like Habib. Like I always think about Habib, man. Like he's like a diehard Muslim, but that's like one of the biggest reasons why he's been so successful. Like in the fighting world and the MMA world, he's been undefeated because he used to talk a lot about his religion, how devoted he was, how he was doing a lot of things for Allah, for God. And just wondering, like, what was your mindset on that? What was your thoughts about that?
I think there's sort of two aspects to it. So you have the sort of, on one hand, you have the sort of like perhaps the psychological and social benefits of you know, people following religion and having that discipline. And then aside from that, I think you also have the individual belief that people have that provides sort of a motivation as well. So what I mean by that is that from a social perspective, not necessarily religion, but when you have a set of laws and rules people are supposed to follow, you know, the society is kept more civil, and the interactions, I would say, become more harmonious because everyone is sort of agreeing not to do certain activities and to engage in certain activities. And so that's one aspect of it. But then personally, I guess individually, when someone has belief, then I think that can become a very powerful psychological tool. And some of perhaps the personal limitations, whether they're emotional or psychological, someone might have through their belief, they might be able to overcome it. And I'm trying to say this purely from in terms of like a secular perspective. Like perhaps a psychologist would look at it and say that when someone has, you know, belief, then these certain phenomena happen in the brain, and that allows them to, you know, be successful. So those are the two aspects, I would say. Speaking to what you were saying regarding the discipline and everything like that, I think religion is one of the things that does provide that for a lot of people. So when you restrict what you can do, and then you also schedule your day in some regard to what your religion dictates, then having that discipline can be beneficial because all of a sudden, you know, you're not wasting time, you're getting things done on time, and it can lead you to being more productive. So I would say those are the two aspects. On the one hand, you have the, you know, social, and on the other hand, you have the individual. And on top of that, I would say when talking about belief in religion, there is the sort of psychological secular analysis of it, and then there's the more metaphysical side of it that people say they experience, which can't necessarily be objectively, you know, measured by science in that way. So like when someone says, you know, I feel God, I have a relationship with them, you can measure perhaps the beneficial things that belief the person has, the consequences of that, but you're not necessarily able to measure, for example, communication someone has. So there's the metaphysical side, which is, I guess, a bit more individual. That's like your relationship with God. And then you have the social, which is how your religion, you know, has you interact with other people. So those are the two sides. So secular and metaphysical, and on the other hand, communal and individual. That's the two sides.
Absolutely. Like my biggest thing is like you have to have something, man. Like you have to believe in something. It's either in the law, this is, you know, the same thing as God in Christianity. But you have to have something like a higher power where you will hold your values to, you know. Like there's actually like consequences if you don't, if you know, you sin or you do something that's against the morality of these religions. And I think it's always just helpful to have that. And I think if someone does have a strong religious conviction, I think it's just better off, man. In training and life and the way that you deal with other people, the way that you come across with other people, you're doing things for the greater good, like it's for a greater cause. So I think it's always good, and it just reminds me of just, you know, having that stronger conviction to motivate yourself, and always, you know, if you ever feel lost at any point, going back to religion and you know, knowing that God's always going to be there for you. I think that's a very powerful thing to have, you know.
The rights and liberties we have over here. In order to not, go out of control, you need to have some sort of self-regulation, right? Because, for example,
Commandments, morality.
not necessarily that, but like for example, in the United States, right? You have a constitutional, you have a Bill of Rights. So you have, certain freedoms afforded to you,
like a court of law.
Yeah, and there's a certain cost that comes with blindly following your emotions and like what your so in Arabic, right? So in Islam, we have something called nafs, right? Which is like what you want to do, right? So it can be many different things, and if you blindly follow that, then short term you can get the benefit, but long term you're really sacrificing. So for example, instead of sticking hard to a certain study and work schedule for a couple of years in order to progress your future, if you're just out hanging around, wasting time, having fun, that's a sort of short-term gratification, and you're losing out on the long term. And when you have just pure freedom and you tell people you can do whatever you want and everything, I think that becomes a lot more prevalent. So people, my belief is that people have a natural inclination to following what's like satisfying short term. So like getting everything quick now. That's like if you look in the United States, we have everything on credit, right? Which is people don't have money. I just want it right now. I want it right now. It's like constant, instant gratification. And to some extent, I would say religion does help in mitigating that and helping you set long-term standards. But the other thing I just want to say is that when you remove accountability, right?
Yeah.
For what you do, it becomes sort of very subjective, and it always changes what's necessarily good or what's bad. So for example, a lot of social changes have happened in the past 30-40 years in the United States, like stuff that was totally unacceptable 100 years ago or 200 years ago, totally acceptable nowadays. So when you remove sort of if you have a rigid belief structure, then it gives you like a morality that doesn't change. So you can say 200 years ago this was good, and today it's good, or 200 years ago it's bad, and today it's bad. So having that grounding, I think it's beneficial, because then it prevents you from going and perhaps making changes that everyone thinks is okay in society, but you don't necessarily understand the long-term risks of it. So like certain social changes, like from a legal or social or like a freedom perspective, it's not necessarily that bad that people do whatever, but we don't know what's going to happen in the long term, like how that's going to play out over a period of 20-30 years. So I think religion, by having a solid and rigid a legal code almost, the potential for growth and change, you lose that, but you keep what works. So it's almost like a better safe than sorry in terms of like how we function in our society, our interactions and the freedoms and laws we afford people.
Definitely.
That's what I would say.
Gazi, bro, is always good talking to you, man. It's always good seeing you too, bro. Next time we'll do part 2, man, and we'll keep the conversation going.
I
think in the future we can talk about like differences between Christianity and
Islam.
Man, honestly, bro, I think Islam is gaining a lot of points right now, and I think Christianity's kind of like they're slacking a little bit, man. And, that'll be a good conversation.
I think that's why I brought up the whole point of like being rigid and stuff. It's kind of like Christianity. I feel like over the past 100 years, we've changed a lot, and people don't really follow the rules anymore. And I think maybe that's why a lot of Christian countries
that we're seeing now.
Yeah, bro, it's just like a lot of Christian countries aren't necessarily Christian, right? It's more like an emotional thing. And I don't know. I feel like it, for me, in my opinion, I feel like that's led to a lot of social issues that, I mean, I'm not saying they're bad, but we don't know the long-term consequences of them. That's all.
Yeah, definitely, man. Guys, again, it was a pleasure, bro. Guys, we'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.